Welcome back. I exported the Solaria lead vocal as a separate aspiration and tone layer, which we've been through before, but just as a reminder, tone.
I used to be trapped in a
severe lisp, and the aspiration.
I used to be trapped in
basically the breath and all of the S's and T's and CH's and anything else. And you put them together.
I used to be trapped in a cage of my own making.
Even though I did my best to have the levels of the vocal fairly consistent in Synth V, as you can see, they just don't stay that way. As you know, when you look at these waveforms, you're looking at the total volume or the total peak of the signal, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's always super loud. Like this looks 3 times as loud as those, but it's not when you play it.
I used to be trapped in
It's definitely louder, but it's actually to do with specific frequencies within it. So let's just have a quick look at the spectrogram.
I used to be trapped in
So the first few words are peaking around here where my cursor is, but when trapped comes in,
I used to be trapped in
it's right at the top. Now what's interesting is it's not the fundamental that's peaking that high, it's the frequencies after it. Watch.
I used to be trapped in
So the fundamental's peaking here, which is minus 42, and
to be trapped in
these are peaking at minus 19. It's almost 20 dB difference just for these specific frequencies. Let me just loop this section, and I'll freeze it. Okay. So you can see the shape here. This is the fundamental, which is, you know, the base of the note. And the rest are resonances. And these resonances are kind of crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take note of where they are. So we're going from 725 to 2K. And then the middle is around 1.25K. So what I'm going to do here is open up Pro Q3. And basically I want to use a dynamic EQ. So what did I say? 1250 as the midpoint. And I'll make it dynamic. And I will change the slope to 24 so we get more of this range here covered. And if I was to have a look what we're covering for the full effect at the moment, it's like 890 to 18. So we need it a bit wider. Well, yeah, I'll tell you what, why don't I just play it? So I can see now I'm catching all of these in. And in fact, I can probably leave it as it was and just move the frequency till it's on those specifically. And then I'm going to drop it to about -6 and see how that sounds.
I used to be trapped in I used to be trapped in I used to be trapped in I used to be trapped in.
I think that's better, a lot better. Now the other thing while we're at it is the B, the word before the trapped. There's some serious resonances on that as well.
Beat, 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 beat.
And they're here. So I'm going to do the same thing. So here's the first one I dealt with, and this is the second one. It's usually on a sustained E or A sometimes because they kind of diphthong into an E, A, right? And these come up and they're razor sharp. So let's see the range. We got from 2.2K to 5K. So I'll do the same thing with Pro Q. I'll add a new one. It didn't decide on the middle frequency. 3.3. So I'll just type that in here, 3300. And same drill, I will make it dynamic. And I will Change the slope to 24. And I'll also put it down to -6 because it's dynamic and the Pro Q3 automatically adjusts the threshold and attack and release for us. It's all about how it sounds. So let's run this. So I'll play the whole phrase.
I used to be trapped in. 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 I used to be trapped in.
Yeah, it's good. And it's helped trapped as well because it is obviously extending into that range too. Definitely improved and it sounds good. But the main thing I'm doing here is preparing this for when I drop it into the track. This is not my final compression pass or anything like that. This is still kind of tidy up zone. The other thing, of course, is because the aspiration layer is separate, all that we're compressing up here are the tones, the pitches with the resonances. But down here, we're not affecting these at all. So normally when you compress a whole signal, everything would get compressed a little bit and the things that require to get louder, whereas these breaths and these S's and T's and that, they're staying the same level, even though we're adding some dynamic EQ here. I actually also add a little bit compression as well. So let's just have a look. I'm using the free Melda M compressor, and the free one basically does exactly what you're going to see here. But one thing it doesn't do is resize. So I'm going to resize just to make it easier for everybody to see. So what am I doing with this?
I used to be trapped in. I used to be.
Okay, so you can see the range here is going between.
Be trapped in. I used to be trapped in.
I'm going to move the threshold to just under where the trapped happens.
I used to be trapped in. I used to be trapped in.
And you can confirm that by seeing this popping down just for
I used to be trapped in.
Okay, I'm going to increase the RMS to 30 milliseconds. And I'll change the ratio actually to 2:1. And I'll leave the other things, 50, 10, those are fine. Oh, I'll put it to soft as well. See, let's check this, make sure it's still doing what we expect.
I used to be trapped.
Right, so because it's soft now, it's starting compression a bit earlier. So I'm going to need to move the threshold to we're just doing a little, maybe 3 dB of the word trapped only. So let's take the threshold right away.
Trapped in. I used to be trapped in. I used to be trapped in.
That's good enough. So again, the idea of this pass, which I'm doing now, is not to do a final vocal. It's to even it out in a useful way so that all the effects I add from now on have less to do. And of course, that's always a good thing. So what I'm actually doing is sort of repairing the performance right now. I'm not working on the sound, I'm working on the performance. Some things were a little too nasally, some things were a little too loud, and that's what and then of course the S's and T's and things as well. Let's have a listen, make sure we're happy with the way they're coming through, because what we can do is actually de-S that layer. In fact, I'm just going to anyway. I just usually
used to be trapped in.
put the range to 9 or 12.
Be trapped in.
And then since we're only listening to the aspiration layer, I can widen this because there's no other word. There's no other tones that are going to affect it. It's just breath and sa, ta, ka, ra. Not ra. Okay.
I used to be trapped in. I used to be trapped in. I used to be trapped in. I used to be trapped in.
See, that's good. These four were good. This one was still a little hot. So what I'm going to do is just do one of these. Select that air. And again, doing it like this, you know that you're only cutting this out. You don't have to worry about your tone at all. And Shift X there. And then I'll drop that, say 3 dB.
I used to be trapped in.
Good. What I'm going to do actually is I'm not going to mix this down just now, but I'm going to just commit this so we can see the difference that these things have made. Render in place, channel settings, dynamic EQ, go. Okay, so I'm going to put the track on underneath. I'm going to mute that, and I will solo those so I can swap between these two. So let's turn these off. So this is unprocessed, and we'll just have a little A/B between unprocessed and our rendered down version.
I used to be trapped in, I used to be trapped in, I used to be trapped in, I used to be trapped in.
Yeah, it sounds way more consistent. Let's do that whole first line.
I used to be trapped in a cage of my own making. I used to be trapped in a cage of my own making.
Well, we can see that it's more consistent, right? We're not peaking like that anymore, but we're not losing the power from this. In fact, we've gained some, right? The beginning of the word trapped is a little stronger, and the sustain part is evened out, which is exactly what we're after. Right, next order of business, drums. All right, back with the original stems that I separated. Let's just listen to the drums. So the easiest way, well, certainly in Cubase, the easiest way is just to use the hit points. So when the threshold is high, it starts to grab. We want to grab those fills, and looks fairly good now. So then I just generate MIDI notes, and I don't think I want dynamic velocity. I'll just use fixed velocity and hit OK. Go back to the desktop, and now I have drums. Well, sort of. I have one drum. So what you have to do, or what I have to do, is every other beat, of course, is a snare. So I need to copy that up to the snare, and the kick and the snare go together. So that's that. And then work out the fills, what parts are snare and toms, etc. So that's pretty straightforward. So I've got that. So I'll need to go through what I'm actually going to do. I was listening to the drums. I reckon in Spectre layers, I can split down to kick, snare, and cymbals. So I reckon I'll be able to get a sample of that kick, and there should be a cleanish snare around here. Yes. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to do a new version of this track, and I like the way it sounded. Why not use its drums? Okay, onto the bass. The bass actually is, it looks like it's got a side chain on it because they're swelling up to the notes, but that could be to do with the separation, right? Some of the bass could be getting mixed into the other and into even to the drums for the attack of the bass. But the result is it sounds like a bit of a sidechain effect. It's definitely a sidechain effect. You can see how the kick's decay is where this releases, and the rest of the digga-digga notes go right up until the next kick or snare. So really we've basically almost got this, because all I need is the MIDI file that we already generated from Dakota. So if I just import MIDI file, okay, and once I load that up to here, I will look inside and I'll see that I know it's C, A flat, so these are the notes here. So if I go to these notes and drop them down an octave, and I can delete these. If I get my scissor tool and hold Alt, I can cut them into eighth notes. And just to show that, So there you go. That's how the bass gets done. Easy peasy. Really, it's all about sound selection now because I've got the chords for the other, and of course I got the Solaria vocals. So let's jump to the whole thing. As you can see, I got a little carried away, and the track is pretty close to being finished. I haven't mixed it yet, so you have to bear with me on this, but I do want to include this in this video because otherwise it could be a little while before I've got the finish mixed. So the big thing I want to show you here, and this is, I don't know if it's unique to Cubase. I'm sure other DAWs have this sort of potential. But what I've done is I've set up the Q channel to use as a reference channel. What that means is I've got the track separate up here, and it's on the Q over here, and mix is my main mix, and I can have them running in sync. And the best bit is I can actually level match them. So I'm just going to use a mix monolith here. I've got it set at -14, and I'll just hit learn while it's playing.
To a brighter tomorrow, I'm leaving behind all the doubt.
Okay, and then I do the same with mine.
To a brighter tomorrow, I'm leaving behind all the doubts in the sun.
Great. So now they're level matched. And basically, if you're interested, the way you do this is you take the channel and you send it to a Q, and you turn the volume down here, and you have this pre-fader. And then you just have, it just shows up in the Q. It's that easy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to play out now, and I'm going to just play up to the end of the chorus. And I'm going to kind of do a couple of bars of each, and the graphic will show you which is which, because you should be able to tell the difference. But I have to say, this method helps getting a very similar kind of mix going on pretty quickly. All right, so hopefully you found this useful, and I'll see you soon.